I truly believe like nothing worth actually doing in life is easy.
Yeah.
Any pursuit that's difficult is really, and having those hardships and figuring out how to get through them, that's what makes something worth doing. Anything easy is not, you don't get much out of it.
Yeah.
Welcome to Iron Summit, where we cover topics about health, fitness, and general performance through the eyes of former elite Division I wrestlers.
We're live. It's a special episode. Got some new merch on. Also, more importantly, it's my turn to interview Max. The only problem is, guys, the only caveat to this, I don't have any, this was a off the rip.
These are the rules.
No preparation. But we're going to figure this out. All right.
Ryan gets 30 minutes to interview me, but he has no preparation and I have no idea what he's going to ask me. So, and then I get to reciprocate in a couple weeks.
Whoa. No, because that's preparation. You don't get to. That's preparation.
No, I'm not gonna think about
inherently.
it.
Yeah. Okay. That's what everyone says. All right. So Max, I would like to start with, how did you get into wrestling and what brought you to the sport of wrestling? Take me down
That's
that.
a good question.
Yeah.
It's really a simple answer. Long story, but simple. Judo.
Okay.
I started judo when I was 4. My dad was a big judo athlete. I didn't do a lick of wrestling until 8th grade. Wrestled my middle school season in 8th grade, which those of you know, middle school, affiliated with the middle school, not like club, middle school wrestling season, which is 4 weeks. It's a joke.
They took our middle school wrestling away the year I got to middle school. I was so mad.
That sucks because you would have absolutely murdered kids. But I did pretty well, but I was just doing judo and wrestling.
Yeah.
And this was also middle school wrestling and it's just not very competitive. And decided, hey, I kind of enjoyed that. Did it my freshman year at Boulder High School, but I was junior varsity freshman year. There was actually a pretty decent kid at 145 in front of me, like a state qualifier. It's my first year wrestling ever because I hardly count 4 weeks of middle school wrestling.
Yeah.
But shout out real quick to my former middle school wrestling coach, Mike Stanley. He was a stud. He was a multiple time All-American from Adams State and just happened to be a science teacher at the middle school I went to.
That's sweet.
So the guy who got me into wrestling was an absolute stud. But I hardly count that season. Freshman year, JB behind a kid who was a state qualifier. And after my freshman year, I was like, I don't know if wrestling's the right sport for me. I'm going to go focus on judo.
Yeah.
And gave up wrestling, didn't think about it that summer at all. And then my high school coach, Glenn Kingsley, is his name, at Boulder High, sat me down before sophomore year started and was like, Max, I think you have some real talent. You have some real athleticism. If you put some time into wrestling, you'll be successful. Just give it one more season. And ended up, I had a really good sophomore year. I wrestled varsity. I think I was 35-7. I was ranked 5th in state. I ended up going on to a state. That's a whole other story. I got the flu, and everyone gets the flu at state though. Whatever. I went 0-2. That's no excuses.
No, hey.
Yeah, but I was 35-7, ranked 5th in state going into state. I started to have a little taste for success.
Yeah. So
then after that year, I was like, well, okay, a couple things. One, people care a little bit when you're good at wrestling. You get on the newspaper, girls pay attention to you a little bit. With judo, that didn't exist. And Ryan's laughing because wrestling's not like football, right? But it's better than judo.
Actually, the reason I'm laughing, I was talking to Axel at Nationals, and he was telling me you were the guy in high school, taking your shirt off in the cafeteria. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what made me laugh. Is I was
that's a specific story.
Started wrestling. I would see. My next question. No, finish first.
Yeah, so that's how I got into wrestling. Though after that, I was like, well, and biggest thing. Actually, and this really was my junior year when I started to have real success.
Yeah.
And really learned how to wrestle. I wasn't just doing judo on the wrestling mat. As I started getting exposure to college wrestling coaches, I was like, I can go get an education with this. I can't with judo. So I switched full time to focusing on wrestling really around my junior year.
Yeah. What was your weight?
That's how I got in.
What was your weight class progression? You started at 145. I've seen some pictures
Yep.
of you when you were younger. You were like small, like not small, but compared to what you are now, like small, you know?
Yeah. I went 145, 160, but like cutting to make 160, 189, but like not cutting at all, to like cutting a decent amount to make 189 my senior year.
Okay. Nice.
That was my progression.
That's insane. Honestly, when you think about that, like going from basically wrestling, starting in high school to like going into college, getting recruited and having a successful college career, like that's insane, especially in today's day and age with the specialization that goes on at such a young age. Did you feel like when you got to college, did you feel like there was a huge learning curve, or did you feel like
I had to catch up for sure.
Okay.
I will caveat it though, like judo is so similar to wrestling, particularly the judo I grew up in, because there were like, when I was doing judo, you were allowed to attack the legs. They got rid of that. Actually right around when I did my Olympic redshirt year. So judo and wrestling used to be really similar. So I wouldn't say like, I started from square zero. I probably like, I had a lot of mat time growing up.
Yeah.
But yes, there was a learning curve. And when I got to college, I was pretty good. I mean, as a senior, I had some real success. I was undefeated state champ. I was ranked like 18th in the country. Like I had some success, but I still had to catch up to the kids that were coming in multiple state champs, blue chip recruits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like growing up, were you like, obviously your dad did judo, and then you have a brother, like, were you wrestling a lot with your brother? Was your dad helping you out, or was this mostly just through high school? Were you going to clubs? How did you, I mean, closing a gap like that in 4 years is insane, going from, and I understand you had some judo background, but like the fact that you go from basically not wrestling to wrestling in high school when, there's kids that have been doing it since 4.
It's a great question. Yeah, I had awesome coaches.
Yeah.
One, I had Glenn, my high school coach, was just a really good coach for teaching basics, but he also allowed me to work with really good partners and bring really good partners in the room. And when I was like, I'm going to be serious about wrestling, yeah, my dad and my brother both really my dad had like same learning curve.
Yeah, cool.
My dad's like a psycho about wrestling now. He wants to do it himself all the time. But he's brought in really good partners for me. Like probably give the biggest credit to Jesse. I learned how to wrestle from Jesse Jansen, who was a national champion for Harvard. He moved to Colorado when I was in high school. I worked with Jesse incessantly, like 2 times a day, 3 times a day. There's Greg Parker, who was a national finalist for Princeton, also lived in Colorado. I worked with him a lot. And then there were Ryan and Kelly Flaherty, who both wrestled at Wisconsin. They were my junior and senior year because they were bigger guys. I worked with them all the time. So I learned how to wrestle like in a very short time, but from very high level college wrestling partners.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So when did your like lifting programs to really start kicking in? Like, I know probably obviously, and once you went from 97 to heavyweight in college, but like, how'd you lift and how'd you think about lifting growing up? Obviously put on a lot of weight from, probably when the time you got to high school to when you graduated, but what were you doing back then?
That's a good question. So I really started getting to lifting like sophomore year of high school. That was another you start lifting, you start noticing girls start paying attention to you. Yeah. You can be cool without being cool, if you have some muscles. That's the truth. So like sophomore year of high school, and it's actually the first program I followed was, do you remember Vernon Davis? He was a tight end.
Yeah.
49ers, like absolutely jacked tight end. He in Muscle and Fitness, he had a program.
Okay.
Vernon Davis, like strength. And I followed that for like 8 weeks. I was like, started like seeing gains. I was like, this is awesome.
So hold on. This was sophomore year, you said?
Sophomore year of high school.
All right.
I had always lifted. My dad was into lifting. I kind of like messed around with it, but I'd say sophomore year of high school is when I really started lifting.
Okay.
Yep.
So you started there, you continue to do what high schoolers do, and you're lifting with maybe your buddies or through the high school strength program.
Yep.
But you didn't start taking it seriously till college, or did you start towards later in high school?
No, that's call it. I mean, I was really strong in high school for a high school kid, and pretty muscular for a high school kid, but I wasn't like doing all the right things. Definitely lifting like an absolute high schooler
Yeah.
meathead.
Yeah.
Not, I was like eating healthy. My parents always like encouraged me to eat healthy, but I wasn't like dialed into my nutrition. In college, I started to get really into it. The strength training for wrestling, I started to really buy into that. And, like when you are in college, you have to be strong on the wrestling mat. So like, if you're going to take it seriously, you got to take your strength and conditioning seriously.
Yeah.
And then the diet piece, which I think is, arguably one of the most important pieces to strength and conditioning, I started taking very seriously because of the amount of weight I was having to cut to make 197. I had to like learn how to count macros, understand the importance of each macronutrient, micronutrients, manage all that. Because if I didn't do it right, I wasn't making 197.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you got to Lehigh, right? So first of all, what made you choose Lehigh? And then once you got there, was that a big adjustment? Obviously going from high school to college, but socially, I mean, you have a huge, basically full-time job with wrestling, and then academically, it was probably a lot harder than high school, I'm assuming. I don't know. Maybe your high school was really tough. But like, how was that adjustment? And like, yeah, talk me through that.
That's also good question. So, chose Lehigh because academics was important to me. The schools I was really seriously looking at were all like pretty academics heavy institutions. I was looking at a couple Ivies, the military academies, and Lehigh were really my top choices. But what stood out to me at Lehigh, like it was academically prestigious, but wrestling, like sports, were still felt like that was the Lehigh wrestling was. You go to Lehigh to wrestle and get a good degree.
Yeah.
You go to Harvard to get a good degree and wrestle.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me. So Lehigh was, that's why I chose Lehigh. It felt like could get the degree I wanted, but also have the emphasis on wrestling I wanted. And the last piece with Lehigh was wrestling is the sport there, which I thought was really cool. It's not football. It's not basketball. It's wrestling. Like the matches are sold out. There's a huge wrestling fan base in the Lehigh Valley. So that aspect was really cool as well. And then in terms of transition, huge transition, I was convinced my first 2 semesters that I was a dumb jock. I got like, it's embarrassing, but like below a 3.0 GPA, bad grades. And then I realized like, I'm just not applying myself to academics the right way. And so that transition took like a full year in the academics piece.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool. I think it's easy like to get caught up in college with like, you see all these athletes around you, like kind of joking around about school. But like to recognize that and turn that around, I think that's sweet. And then obviously,
I got on that point. What did it for me is I got competitive about it.
Okay. Really?
Just like with, I was like, I want to get the best grades on the wrestling team and I want to get better grades than all these non-athlete nerds.
So what made you, what made you make that competitive? Cause you don't just go from one day not caring to another day, like, I'm going to do this.
I don't know. I think I realized I was like, I was being a dumb jock. Like I was telling myself I'm a dumb jock. I don't need to do this. I'm not exactly sure. Actually, it kind of coincided with when my brother came to Lehigh because I started competing with him a little bit on grades.
Yeah.
And then I started competing with everyone.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
I think that's where it came from.
How was it, the experience of being at college with your brother? Because that seems like such a unique experience.
It was awesome. I mean, we, trying to think, besides Axel's freshman year, because they make you live in the dorms in freshman years, we were roommates the whole time.
That's sweet.
So yeah, it was a great experience. Getting to share. And Axel, unfortunately, he came to Lehigh to wrestle too, but had to retire due to shoulder injuries. So in a lot of I'm really lucky that he was there to like support me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I actually used to think like it'd be really tough to be with a sibling in college. And then actually one of our former guests, Lucas Davison. So I lived with him and his brother, Andrew Davison, for a year. And, I've never seen brothers like get along so well, and how cool of an experience and unique of an experience it was. And it was like watching them do that. And like, this is really cool. Like regardless of anything else going on, regardless of like whatever accomplishments in sports or school, it was really cool to kind of see them like continue to like build their relationship in college. and be there for the kind of those like defining years of, kind of turning from a boy to a man.
Yep.
On that note, heard this the other day and I thought it was an interesting question. It was like, somebody asked me, like, when did you realize, like, when did you feel like was a defining moment when you turned into a man? When do you feel like you got that? Or I mean, maybe you're not a man yet. I don't know, Max.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. I was going to say, still waiting. That is a good question. I don't know if I can name a single moment. It's probably more a culmination
Okay.
of a bunch of things. And, probably still some things I got to continue to work on. I do think for a lot of people, it's, I think like becoming a parent is like a huge step. So maybe until then, I'm not a man.
I that's funny. There's got to be a moment, but we'll come back to that in a couple of weeks. You think about it.
I don't have like a standout moment.
No, you're good.
So probably after some sort of hardship, though. It's not going to be like when I became an All-American, right? It's after a hardship.
It was probably too, like, I don't know. I think for a lot of people, when you go off on your own, probably like outside of college, once you're like, on your own, supporting yourself. So like, I don't know, but like you're saying, I don't know if there's one moment, but it's like over accumulation of years. But yeah, it was interesting when I heard that the other day. So
that is a good question.
Going from 197 to heavyweight, right? That's when it seems like a huge turning point in your career. You had to like do this different thing that's really hard, putting on a lot of weight. And then I'm sure probably you already liked lifting weights, but it sparked a big passion for you. How did that transition go? And I'm going to assume it wasn't a straight line. Like, this is easy. I just consistently put on, a bunch of weight. Where were you at? Where did you get to? And how did that progression look like going from 197 to heavyweight?
That is a good question. Yeah. From a career perspective, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I was just cutting too much weight. I was hampering my athletic performance abilities just by trying to fit my body into a weight class.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be at. So the progression, I mean, it went really quick at first because you're like sucked down, it's not like real weight you put on initially. But I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. I weighed in at an open tournament on Sunday at 197. Then coach called me that evening. It was like, hey, I want you going to heavyweight. We have Oklahoma on Thursday. I want you wrestling heavyweight. I weighed in there at 227.
Jeez.
So in 4 days, I mean, I was eating a lot.
Still.
It was like, like that was like I went from a 197 to a fluffy 227, but that's I was probably sitting like naturally around 220.
Okay.
Cutting to make 197. And yeah, like it was hard for me to get to 210. And then the last 13 pounds were like miserable.
Yeah.
And then the progression, my first year at heavyweight, which was my, try to think. So I did the Olympic retro year was the year I came back from. That was my first year at heavyweight. Like halfway through that year. By the end of that year, I was like maybe 230, but like a softer 230. Sophomore year, I started to put on real weight. I got up to like 245, 250, but it was softer. I was definitely, you look at pictures and videos of me, that was like a fluffy max at 250. I remember
what you had to do.
That is what you got to do.
Yeah.
You got to get jacked. You got to get fluffy.
Yeah.
At some point. But I remember the first time I hit 250, I was super pumped.
Yeah.
Like, chugged a gallon.
That's
up
awesome.
on the scale 250. And then junior year, unfortunately, I was hurt the entire year. I didn't get to wrestle. And this was before you got like 19 years of eligibility.
Yeah.
So I missed my whole junior year. But that also, I mean, I had to deal with 2 orthopedic surgeries that year. So I'm trained around that, but it also allowed me to like focus a little bit more on strength training and just put on good weight. And then my senior year, I was a 245 to 250, but like a solid, like leaner 245 to 250. I could move well.
Yeah.
It never felt really good. And I couldn't really keep my weight above 250 while wrestling. It's just too many calories. I was eating a ton of calories as is, but that was kind of my progression throughout the weight.
Yeah. So, and you almost didn't come back. We've talked about this a little bit for your senior year. Can you talk us through kind of like what happened and what made you like ultimately decide like, hey, I'm coming back, and then how that went on to be? I know you've talked about it a little bit before, but your best year ever, I think, to quote you, like in terms of
for
like, not
sure.
just obviously
It was my best.
not just
Yeah,
wrestling,
in a
but
lot
like
of ways.
you felt like I mean that
I
outside of
enjoyed
any
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I enjoyed wrestling. Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think if I can spread this message to anyone who's pursuing elite athletics, this is what I would stress. And I'm lucky in hindsight that I had that junior year. That was miserable. 2 orthopedic surgeries. I was 5 orthopedic surgeries deep at that point. And I'm just questioning, am I going to do this anymore? We had another really good heavyweight at that time. It was a big recruit. Like if I came back my senior year, wasn't even my spot guaranteed. So I really very nearly walked away from the sport. I think mentally I did that summer.
Yeah.
I wrote it off, and then I made the decision, all right, I'll come back, but on, kind of terms where I could walk away at any moment. That was the approach I took my senior year, and it was freeing. I was no longer in this cage of having to perform. It was like, I get to perform. And then I did a lot of work with a sports psychologist, Jared Spencer, who's also he's with Shane's, and Lucas, the sports psychologist at Michigan this last year.
Yeah.
So did a lot of work with him. I did a lot of reading, and I realized that instead of being focused on results, I would be focused on the process the whole way. So I think having the freedom of being able to walk away at any moment combined with focusing on the process just allowed me to perform without pressure.
Yeah.
And then, I came back, I earned the spot and went on to become an All-American.
No, that's really cool. And I think the best thing too is like, the funny thing is when you're mentally feeling good outside of it is when you perform your best. And so did you like that pressure? I think a lot of people feel pressure. Did you feel that from the outside? Was that pressure you put on yourself? And where did that come from? Was that always kind of around throughout your career? Or did it start, as you started getting better, you felt more and more pressure? Where did what happened?
I think it was, it's mostly self-inflicted. I'm not going to blame anyone. I think obviously is whenever you're doing Division I sports competitively, there's an inherent pressure. You're expected to perform and try to perform, but it was more a focus on the results. Like you want to perform so badly that you become obsessed with the results.
Yeah.
And then that leads to a pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
When I was willing to walk away at any point and had a focus on purely the process, that allowed me to perform to my ability.
Yeah.
And so I think that missing that entire junior year was in a lot of ways like one of the best things. And then to your point, right? Like, yes, I had my best year performance wise, but I also had a great time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
cool.
I just enjoyed wrestling. I always tell people like wrestling and I have had a bumpy relationship along the way a few times, but we ended in a good place.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. That is honestly, I think a lot of people struggle with that and to like cap your career on such a high note and obviously what you did, but then also like just outside of that is really cool. And I think a lot of what you're talking about seems to me like one of the biggest things that Division I athletes have, all athletes have in general, is like putting their identity in their sport. And so it's really easy to say you don't do that, but like everything that you do revolves around your sport. You're like, if you beat me, you beat me as a person.
How do you not?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to keep that in
wrestling.
check. Yeah.
Wrestling is like, we've talked about this before, but it's like very intense because not only did you lose at your sport, but you just got like manhandled. And that just like the combination of that makes losing really hard. But talk about becoming a man.
Yeah.
If you can learn how to process defeat in wrestling, like it gets you closer. Doesn't get you all the way there, but it definitely helps.
Absolutely. Max, I want to shift gears a little bit. I think
you have T-5. You got
no. I'm adding 5. I'm adding 5. So the other thing is like you started a company while you're in college, right? And I think lesser known about you is like how successful you are outside of athletics as well. Because super successful wrestlers, super successful like lifting, aesthetics, powerlifting, all that stuff. But let's talk about the academic weapon that is Max Wessell, business weapon. How did you?
That doesn't exist.
Come on, how did your business
Just the
start?
meathead.
You try to play this dumb meathead, but I see right through you. All right. But talk to me
This
about
does.
starting your company.
Yeah. So when I was in college, started a company called NX Athlete. That was really simply help college athletes get jobs and help employers hire college athletes. Started that my junior year, and um, it was really just like while I was in college, it was really just an idea. It
Yeah.
wasn't a real business. Um, Hired a set of with my roommate at that time, who was a co-founder. We hired like a set of graduate students to write the like a super simple base code. And it really wasn't like a focus. It was something fun, a cool project, an idea until after I graduated in 2016, we decided, hey, let's try and turn this into a real business. And between 2016 and 2020, we started to gain some traction with athletic departments around the country. To make a long story short, we went through a merger acquisition in 2021. The business NX Athlete became a business called Game Plan. Game Plan was had the same kind of career focus on helping college athletes get jobs, but also had a compliance and learning management software system. A lot of college athletes use Game Plan for mandatory compliance, also for any sort of continuing education that you'd want to do through e-learning. But today we are at over 100 athletic departments and serve NFL, NBA, NHL, MLS, MLB, all the major professional leagues. So it's a flourishing business today with exciting things happening as we speak, and really excited about the future there. But it is, the being a meathead is probably what I'm most passionate about, but the real job, so to speak, is also something, I think it's important to use your brain as well as your body. So working on that stuff is actually what takes up most of the time.
Yeah. I think that's really cool, man. And how did you go from, I mean, just an idea to like, when I think about like building and scaling a company, going through a merger, like figuring out all these different things, you're young, you just kind of figure this out on the fly. How'd you go about figuring this out and not, I think a lot of people do this, it blows up in their face, and you've navigated these waters well, and you got a lot of experience and a lot of, you've done a lot of really cool things. How did you do that?
Yeah, I'm super fortunate. It's just like wrestling. Like I closed the gap because I had excellent partners and mentors in wrestling. Same thing in business. I'm super fortunate where my dad is an absolute weapon in business. So I've been and I came up watching him and had the benefit of having him as a mentor the whole time. So I'd say that's probably number one. Number two is being willing to continue learning, because you can get a business degree, but you don't learn how to do business. Like that's comes by doing business and being in the workforce, whatever aspect of business you're doing. So I've kind of learned on the fly as well, and definitely over the last 6-7 years have developed the skills necessary to be able to help grow a business. Wasn't always that way, and there's been it's not been all peaches, and it's definitely not easy. There's been some serious bumps along the way. So it's still sometimes a grind, but it's like wrestling. It's rewarding at the end of the day. I truly believe like nothing worth actually doing in life is easy.
Yeah.
Any pursuit that's difficult is really, and having those hardships and figuring out how to get through them, that's what makes something worth doing. Anything easy is not, you don't get much out of it.
I love that. I think that's sweet. What advice do you have for somebody, coming up through college, young adult, maybe a little bit after college, figuring out their path? How should they think about stuff? How should they think about business? How do they put themselves in good positions? You talked about continuing to learn, but what advice do you have for somebody like that?
I'll kind of reiterate what I said before, but find a good mentor, find someone who is also willing to invest in your learning. So when assessing a position, don't only assess in the business world, that's what I can speak to, but don't only assess salary, uh, title, the kind of more material things. Assess like, who are you going to be working with? What are you going to be working on? What is your opportunity to grow? I'd say those are really key things. And I would also say, I think you can learn a lot not doing it the conventional way. You don't have to go kill yourself in investment banking for 5 years first. Like, you can go work for a startup and gain a ton of knowledge that way, and then transfer your skills into something else. Like, there's, or sometimes going and working in investment bank, you're going to get so much. You're going to be drinking through a fire hose. You're going to have excellent experience by the end of your time. So I think, like, if I can sum it up, there's just not one way to do it.
Mhm.
But be open to different ways of doing it, and it's about who you work with as much as what you're working on.
Cool. I like it. All right. I got 2 more questions. One more.
All right, you're over time, so
Well,
I get this amount of time when I interview you.
okay. 2
I'm
more
keeping
questions.
track.
So the first one is, Max, I think you're somebody that does such a great job with time management and being able to, I think everybody talks about like a work-life balance, but like, you truly live the fact that you work really freaking hard and you put your everything into business, but you're also like into your hobbies and able to like run a gym, do what you enjoy on the side. And, I think that how do you think about blocking your time out so that you can do things? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in like, I just want to do one thing at a time and then focus on another thing. But you do such a great job at handling multiple things at once at a super high level, where most people, like, if I'm going to spend more time on my career, my health and fitness goes down. If I'm going to spend more time on my hobbies, my career goes down. Where you're able to balance everything. How do you think about that? How do you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit it. Like, being a college athlete is 40 hours a week. This is like why I started NX Athlete and wanted to help employers hire more athletes and help more athletes get jobs. You learn how to juggle more aspects of life.
Yeah.
So I'd say it comes from that. And then I think the key, because there are enough hours in the day, it's just how do you spend them? Like, I don't know, this is like a little bit of a tangent, but you've seen the stats on like average screen time for people.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like 6 hours plus. Like, and this is like the average for an adult, I think age 15 to 35 is like around 6 hours. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I think when people say they're too busy or they're can't get in, no, you're just prioritizing things wrong. I prioritize lifting and health really highly, maybe too high, you could argue, but I definitely make it a priority, right? That and getting my work done, and then, spending time with my family and with my wife. Those are the keys in life. So then, like, I make time for those things. Now you say I have a good work-life balance. I would say outside of lifting and working and spending time with my family, I don't have a lot else. So there is like, you do give up. Like, I'm not like being overly social.
Yep.
Certainly not partying. I'm getting to bed early. So you do sacrifice on things that are not of as high priority. But I think that's really what it comes down to, is prioritizing. And then the final piece I'll say there is planning ahead.
Yeah.
I'll usually look at my week, or certainly the next couple of days, and plan out, okay, here's what I'm going to lift. I block that time. Unless something super important comes up at work, I'm respecting that, because I know if I don't get my lift in, I'm not going to operate as well in every other aspect of life. So it's kind of, that's how I approach it. And, I've also, I'm fortunate I have the luxury to kind of work around my schedule in that way. So,
Yeah.
and if you have like a hard 9 to 5, you're going to have to figure out like you're going to have to block time before or after. My wife does this. She works 9 to 5, and Alexis goes to the gym every morning at 7:30. And she makes a priority, and she gets there.
Yeah. I think that's cool though too. I mean, you say that, but it's also like you designed your life that way by building your life around that and creating a company around that and being able to kind of create your schedule week to week in different ways. I also think something that's interesting is there's definitely a threshold to this. So it's not just like busier is better, but around a lot of athletes I've been around, they get better GPAs when they're in their season because they have to prioritize their time correctly. They don't like sit around because like, oh, I got a lot of time to get this paper done. And so I think when you're like firing on all cylinders, sometimes it actually increases your performance, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it seems like making sure your body and mind are sharp helps you in your business. And then your business helps you keep your body and mind,
Yeah. It's a real phenomena. I think that's a great point. I've noticed it in my life post wrestling. Like I am more on point with my training and my work when I have a high workload. There's a tipping point there.
Yeah.
For sure.
You can't redline forever.
No, but you can, I think there's like an optimal workload and there is such thing as too little.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. All right. Last question. I got a theory. I've never met a heavyweight. I can't think of a time. But maybe there's a time. Never met a heavyweight I don't like, right? Like heavyweights are good dudes. And I think that usually my theory is like, usually they're like kind of the bigger kid. So they kind of play on their personality and be nice, but you're like a big jack dude. So I don't think that works for you. So like, why are you this nice guy that, I've seen you in so many different realms, that like, I don't know, Max, I think you do a great job connecting with people. You do a great job being very kind to people when you don't need to be. And maybe sometimes even when like it would be justified not to be. Is that like a spiritual thing? Is that just like who you are? Like, why are you such a good dude I don't know. You're a heavyweight. Question. You're part of the heavyweight crew. You know what I'm saying? Like that came out weird, but like.
No, I appreciate it. One, a very nice sentiment. Two, I guess all heavyweights are we're the coolest.
I actually do. Like I do have a thing where I've never met a heavyweight I don't like.
Honestly, like, you're not really friends with people when you're competing. And I actually used to get kind of annoyed when some of the heavyweights were too buddy because I didn't associate with that, like coming up a weight class. But I will say, like, I still like almost all the dudes I was competing with. I was like, oh, these are actually cool guys.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it must be, it's being raised the right way, taught to treat people kindly. I don't know, just treat people the way you'd want to be treated. I think is a huge thing. And I think just a little bit my natural tendency to be empathic and try and understand people. That being said, I'm sure I also have pissed a few people off in my life.
Everybody has.
So.
But like, is that like a spiritual moral ground? Like, was that faith-based?
I think that, it comes from Christian values. It comes from, I was raised on those values, right? Yeah. That's just like, I think, it's a hard question because it's not something I really think about doing, right? It's like, I guess it just is.
I know, but it's so funny because you're like this super.
But you're the same way.
Stop. I'm interviewing you. Max, I'm talking. You're like this very humble, nice guy. And
and you're making me uncomfortable. Quit complimenting me.
Max,
say something mean.
Guys, if you want him to turn as red as his shirt, just keep complimenting Max. No, Max, you're the man. I appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you more.
Compliments than I do.
No, I don't. So
yeah, you do.
No, it's been great getting to know you. Well, sometime way out, maybe do something different, but it was great. I think it's good people can hear a little bit more of your story. And you're the man.
Thank you. See ya.